All right, guys. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. Myself, Brendan Farley, Jeff Holland, obviously Director of Product Management, and then Matt Louisi. I think what we want to treat today as is a way of zooming in more on what they actually did with Snowflake Intelligence and partnering with the likes of InfoStructs and folks to that extent. So we're going to get through a little bit of how, what is Snowflake Intelligence. Matt will talk more about Whoop's AI journey with Snowflake, and as well as some of their previous journeys with Snowflake, migrating, et cetera, and even the sneak preview, or not a sneak preview, rather a look back in terms of what they did last year at our summit. And then I'll talk a little bit more about adoption. We will have a demo. With that, I'll kick it over to Jeff, who's just going to talk a little bit more about Snowflake AI.
Yeah, and this is actually very useful because oftentimes I jump straight into Snowflake Intelligence, and what I like about the framing here is we can spend a little bit of time and talk more about the Cortex AI platform all up. So I think a few things that I would do in positioning this as we kind of get to Snowflake Intelligence. The first one is, obviously Snowflake is working and doing a lot around AI. We're not trying to do everything in AI though. Like I often like to remind people, at the end of the day, Snowflake's mission is how do you help an organization unlock the full potential of its data? And so really we're focused in all the different ways from ingesting the data to where data is born, all the way to getting insights. How do we help you realize the full potential across the board? So there's a few different areas of investment here. And again, I know this is coming near the end of Summit, at least before we hit Builder and Dev Day tomorrow. But you might have heard a lot of these things. So for instance, in terms of like actually processing data, transforming data, we have incredible innovations of things like AI SQL. If you remember some of the demos there, this lets you do things like have joins that are using AI to understand where you might be able to join, or aggregate using large language models, huge amounts of text into concise summaries. Similarly, we've made a lot of investments in terms of how do you take unstructured data or document data and extract the meaning and value from those. So that's where you'll see parse document, OCR-like capabilities, Doc AI, and a huge slew of upcoming announcements that you'll be seeing around multimodal and just bringing in other modes of media into the picture. Now, in terms of the middle ground, and I was just giving a session here, to me, this middle section is actually why I tell people the most of why I think Snowflake AI is essential for any enterprise doing stuff in AI, because it's all about retrieving the right data for the right context and conversation. So whenever you're building any AI system, this doesn't have to be on Snowflake Intelligence. This could be Agentforce or Copilot or BI or you name it. It's fine wherever it is. Anywhere in that picture, you're going to need to retrieve the right relevant context from a business to that AI. So we want to make it as easy as possible, but also as accurate and efficient as possible to retrieve the right data. So that's where you get our two hero offerings there. The first is Cortex Analyst. That helps you query and retrieve data that is in tables and views, Iceberg or otherwise, to do text-to-SQL type interactions. And then Cortex Search is really powerful at retrieving text document style data and surfacing that to the AI. So these are the powerful building blocks that are just available to you. Now, on the far right side, this is where we start getting closer to actually capturing and surfacing insights. So how do you actually go make sense of all that data? How do you do analysis on that data, potentially using augmented AI to help power that? So I'll actually start from the bottom and then go up. This is where you see Cortex Agents as a thing. Agents, to me, is taking a large language model and then equipping it with a few very powerful and capable pieces. The ability to think and reason and plan so that you give it a complex task or even an easy task, and the agent is able to think through, how best should I solve this? What tools do I need access to answer this question? And being able to adapt and evolve and perform actions on behalf of the user. So we have Cortex Agents as a first-class primitive in Snowflake today that can do things like, hey, I have 3 Cortex Analyst models and 2 Cortex Search services. I'm going to ask it a question. What's the best way to answer it? Now, kind of that last mile is take all of these different building blocks. What does this look like when you bring it all together? And that's where Snowflake Intelligence comes in. And in a second, we have a slide here, so I won't take too much longer there. We jump to the next slide, though. There's a very useful visualization. And again, I think the biggest thing I want to get across here, and Matt's definitely living, breathing truth of this, is you can take something like Snowflake Intelligence, and you can use it as a ready-to-run, off-the-shelf, bits-to-bolts solution, and that's great. And we want to make that awesome and a great option for you all to save a bunch of the work that you do. But everything that it's doing are Cortex and Snowflake APIs behind the scenes. I mentioned it's Snowflake Intelligence is calling agents. The agents is routing between different tools like Analyst and Search. Analyst and Search itself is powered by our Snowflake query engine or some of our unstructured document storage or processing. And we have all these things like connectors from OpenFlow to make this easy. The reason I want to call this out, though, is you can choose at which layer you want to interact with. Maybe in your company, you already have my company name, GPT, super common. Also, everybody uses that naming pattern, so you're not as cool as you think you are, but that's okay. I still like company name GPT. It's catchy. You might have your own company GPT thing. Maybe you don't need Snowflake's intelligence UI right now. That's fine. But you could absolutely benefit from retrieving aspects from Snowflake, whether that's through the agent interface directly or through individual analyst and search calls. So just know our goal here isn't to say you have to bring everything. We want to make this composable, interoperable across the board. So the last one, if we jump to the last slide before I will leave you alone and be quiet for a little bit, is Snowflake Intelligence itself. So this is like the ready to run, everything connected together. There's a lot of work we put into try to making a lot of capabilities that we know are important here for you, so you don't have to build them. Things like surfacing to users when an answer they're getting is coming from a verified, certified query within your organization. That's a super powerful signal to someone in your business to know, is AI right here, or is it hallucinating or getting something wrong? We'll give a nice little badge. It's like, this is a certified query. We always do everything we can to push our agents to look up data. Often, again, if I think about, I go to ChatGPT, I love ChatGPT, to be clear. I go to ChatGPT and I ask it a question. 60, 70% of the time, it's just going to spit out an answer right away based on its training knowledge set. And 30% of the time, it might be like, I'm going to look at the web and maybe try to ground myself in some web research. Snowflake Intelligence is very different. 95, if not 100% of the time, any question you ask Snowflake Intelligence, our agent's going to say, let me go look up the right data. And let me ground myself in the most recent data first before I generate any answer. It's a very conscious choice that we've made. Yes, that means sometimes you might wait a few more seconds for Snowflake Intelligence, but the outcome is your data is grounded in your enterprise data all of the time as well. So a great option, and maybe even before we transition over to Whoop, one of the things is we set out to build Snowflake Intelligence, because I was hearing time and time again, how do we surface those insights to more parts of the organization? I wanted to make sure that I was grounding myself in some reality. So I had the wonderful privilege to bump into Matt and team a few months ago, and they've been incredible. Matt was already well ahead of us. I think he talked about your Christmas time project or whatever when you're pulling these things together. And so we've been working together, and they've been an excellent partners, as well as the partners that they've been working with, and trying to figure out how to make this real.
Cool. Jeff, one more thing before we jump ahead.
Please.
Where can a customer go and access Snowflake Intelligence?
So it's in private preview now, so you have to be really special and get access, but I'm really generous with giving out tickets to private preview. But this is a standalone portal as well. So this exists right now at ai.snowflake.com. You can go there right now. You're just going to see a login screen that's probably going to be like, you haven't gotten a golden ticket from Jeff yet. But there's a very conscious choice as well, because we know for many people as they think about agents talking to their data, that you probably don't want somebody to also be in a UI where they're looking at your worksheets and they're looking at your query history. Even just seeing that might be disorienting. So we want to give the option to say, hey, here's a standalone, still powered, running on Snowflake, but a separate portal, even with the ability to say, hey, I want this user to only have access to ai.snowflake.com and not snowflakecomputing.com. So that's a big choice that we've made as we've been building this out as well.
Yeah, I think an important thing for that point too is just that, again, you might not want people clicking through Snowsite. That's totally fair as data people, security people, et cetera. And your business users might not want to click through it either. So I think the standalone option is another great thing that we've seen in terms of not only interest, but also adoption within the private preview. So thanks for that, Jeff. We're going to jump into Whoop's AI journey with Snowflake. But before we jump into, yeah, exactly. Let's all.
Yeah, everyone, Whoop represent. Who's got hey, there we go.
But before that, for those that are unfamiliar with Whoop, we'll let Matt just give a little background on what their company does and then get into what they're doing with Snowflake.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. I think it's really important to understand who Whoop is and what we're trying to accomplish and what problems we're facing and where we're turning to Snowflake here before diving in. So Whoop's been around for 13 years, so we're a relatively newish company. We're cloud first, born in the cloud. All of our data is accessible in Snowflake, and the product that we deliver is a 24/7 fitness wearable that Brendan and Jeff just showed on their wrists very graciously, and we're always on. Our 2-week battery life is best in class, and that means that you never have to think about it. As you can see in this image of our latest Whoop MG product, there's no screen. It's distraction-free, and it allows you to go about your life collecting data, and when you need insights, you open the app, and you're able to go in and get everything you need. So we have really great engagement because of this. You don't need to have this distraction device on your wrist all the time. And we also offer free trials, which means the barrier to entry is super low. We want you to try the product, fall in love with it, and continue to engaging with it. We have AI coaching in the app, and the overall goal is to help you improve your performance and unlock longer health span or live a longer and healthier life. So here's some visualizations from the app. Thought it'd be helpful for you to understand how much data we actually collect and surface to our users. Now, everything that we surface to our users, we want to understand how they're using it, why they're using it, and what we can do to make that experience better and make us a stronger business. And it's worn by the top performers in the world. We have some very famous athletes that you'll see here wearing Whoop, and it's something that you'll see when you see them on TV or on social media. So we're very proud of the brand we've been able to build and the amount of talent that we've been able to attract to Whoop. And these aren't people that we're saying, hey, we'll pay you to wear this for an image. They come to us and rely on the product to help them unlock their best performance and their best selves. And it doesn't stop there. We are on the wrists of many people across here. I've been lucky enough to walk around the conference floor all week and see a ton of people with Whoop and the latest hardware. So it's great to see that we're expanding not just into the top athletes, but into all of us in this room and people who are hungry for data and really looking for ways to improve their performance.
Why is my picture not up here with the top athletes
You know,
in the world? I guess it was an earlier draft.
Yeah.
What would the subtitle be for you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Balmer impressionist.
Yeah. Quick plug, there is a Whoop activation booth here. So if you want to learn more about the product, again, for some folks that there's plenty of Whoop employees in the room, but also you have a chance to win a Whoop. There's a hang, a dead hang from a pull-up bar contest as well as a basketball shot contest. And
Yeah, if you want to hang from a bar, you can do that downstairs.
Better way to say it. But one thing I want to point out for what Matt said, I'm going to go back one slide. All of these images are super cool, cool and intuitive inside of the app. But as he alluded to, everything's available inside of Snowflake directly, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and that's through how? Some data loads in, some is available through, you want to just elaborate on that piece a little bit?
Yeah. So this isn't I'm on the analytics side, and we have a very talented data engineering and platform team who's thoughtfully curated a strategy for us, which is heavily rooted in iceberg tables. And with that strategy in mind, we have complete optionality on how we store and structure this data, but we surface it to our business users through Snowflake. And whether that's through BI tooling or SQL querying, it's just there. And as we enter this world of AI, it's also accessible to our agents through the semantic models and semantic views that we're creating. So yes, we have all the data in the business accessible.
Thanks, Matt.
So this is a slide that I actually got to show last year at Summit. And I think it's really interesting. Brendan put this in here, but where we were 12 months ago, it seems like a totally different world because this was considered cutting edge then, and it seems like a toy now.
Yeah.
Like we've just come so far from thinking about like using open source Streamlit and Python to create our own, like using OpenAI to try to write SQL. It just wasn't very good, but at the time it was the best that we could make, and it was the best that a lot of people were seeing. So taking that vision from where we are into 12 months later, seeing that on the keynote stage with Jeff and team presenting, it is really cool. And serendipitously bumped into Jeff in January and got access to Snowflake and Snowflake Intelligence. And even since that, I think Jeff, the first thing you told me is it's not very good, but just try it out and give us feedback. And we're at the point now where every single week I go in and it looks different, it's better, the experience has improved. So it's been great to go from where we are here to where we are today.
We stood up to the not being a very good thing too, because I do remember I'd been testing it out for a few weeks, and I find Matt was the very first private preview customer, and I gave him access, and I said, okay, here you go. I'm sure there's going to be bugs, so just when you find them, let me know. 2 minutes later, he sends me a screenshot. The very first question that he asked, internal server error. Like, didn't even make it one question through.
That was in the earlier draft. I took that one out.
That was after I couldn't even log in.
Oh, yeah. So we've come a long way. We've come a long way.
Yes.
Yeah. And one thing I think is cool to point out here too is like from what you were exploring, using Streamlit and Snowflake, we had no idea Snowflake Intelligence was going to be a potential option, as well as even being able to, utilize some of the work that you guys did with InfoStructs from a custom UI perspective that we'll get into. But then even the DBT semantic layer, all of that essentially came to fruition too, right? That's sort of some of the YAMLs that are powering your business context with Cortex Analyst.
Yeah, that's correct. So we use DBT for all of our transformation on the analytics side, as well as DBT Mesh to take advantage of projects across the organization. And DBT is the central governance layer. So we use YAML files at the table level. So every table, every column is described in YAML, and that persists in Snowflake as comments in the table. And with that, we've been able to generate a very unique and, I think, elegant solution to having YAMLs and semantic models passed into Cortex Analyst in a way that's alluding to what Jeff mentioned earlier, a little bit ahead of where Snowflake Intelligence right now. So what we can start getting into is the project that we undertook internally across a very cross-functional effort from analytics to data platform to data engineering to leverage the APIs of all of the Cortex features and partner with InfoStructs up here to actually bring this thing to life in a way that was like where I want Snowflake to be going, and been lucky enough to work with Jeff and Brendan to actually give this feedback and help it become part of the actual product. So I think if we go along here, that brings us to the agent that we actually built. So we're using LangGraph. I always see a lot of phones. Yep. We're using LangGraph for our...
Zoom in nice and good from the people in the back as well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if these slides are available after, but
we'll publish.
We'll make sure these are published as well. But this is the agent orchestration flow, and the agentic system here is all of the nodes between pieces are agents. Like, we're allowing AI and LLMs to decide what is the next step in our process. And while we're still early on in this journey, you can almost picture this being a dotted line from end to start where we recursively call tools until we have the correct answer. So just talking through the process today of what we've been able to build using Cortex Complete as our LLM, Cortex Analyst as our text-to-SQL engine, and Cortex Search as RAG is this solution. So we built internally a dynamic semantic model generation. And what that means is, one of the things I said to Jeff and Brendan early on was, I don't want my business users to have to know enough about our domain of data to have to select what table they're querying. That should just be an AI. So we built this Python library that will dynamically generate the semantic model that gets passed to Cortex Analyst at runtime in order to abstract that level of decision-making away from the end user, essentially eliminating the need for them to go into a dropdown and select an agent and a tool. That just gets decided by LLMs, which has been super powerful. And I think when we start rolling this out more broadly and starting to see this in the hands of business users who are less technical, will be a huge unlock that I'm excited to see what Snowflake can do here as part of their product as well. So from there, what that means is we search over the space of all of our tables. We select the ones that are relevant to the question, combine them into one YAML file, identify the relationships between those two tables based on data glossaries that we have, and then feed that to Cortex Analyst, which can then write the SQL with the same level of accuracy that if you passed that semantic model to the Cortex Analyst agent directly. So all of that helps us improve accuracy. And then we're using, right now, ingesting data from Confluence and Google Drive into Snowflake, embedding that, making it accessible to Cortex Search, and getting this information. So the agent will then decide, do I need to write SQL or do I need to search over our internal documentation, get the relevant information, give it to an LLM for summarization and cleaning it up for response, and giving that to the user. So where we want to be taking this in the next couple of weeks is actually reasoning. So I think one of the interesting areas that now Jeff's product is ahead of ours is that they are actually able to have this level of reasoning directly in Snowflake Intelligence and make it look pretty good. And once we're able to bring that into our framework, I view it being almost like Sam was saying on the main keynote, like this throw a bunch of compute at it, let the tools run and analyze data and help the business users. So think about a product manager coming into this tool and saying, I'm interested in building a new feature. Should I work on something related to sleep or activities? And the AI will figure out, like, how do I prioritize things? Let me look at past business cases. Let me look at some data points. How do we prioritize things? And it will just ask itself questions, retrieve relevant data, writing SQL and getting that, or unstructured data, and synthesizing through the information, and potentially having a human in the loop to understand, like, hey, here's some next steps. Would you rather do this or this? And also, like Jeff, love ChatGPT. It's been really good at this on some of the latest reasoning models. So we're looking to bring that level of intelligence directly into Snowflake here.
All right, should we get into a demo?
I think so.
All right.
So this is going to be Whoop Genie, which is the internal tool that we've been able to partner with InfoStructs to develop. So it's plugged directly into OAuth using Okta that we authenticate with Snowflake. So the user's permissions are automatically inherited directly from Snowflake, and RBAC is handled that way. So coming into the UI, we've developed some dummy data of insurance claims, just because naturally it's very close to what we do at Whoop. And we can ask a question, how many claims are generated? And you'll see that the agent decides to think, choose a tool. This one's going to be text to SQL. It calls Cortex Analyst, returns to SQL. It gives you the Cortex Analyst generated, this is our interpretation, executes the query, summarizes the results. So if we ask another question, it will do the same thing. And this is where it's very similar to Cortex or from Snowflake Intelligence in the sense that it's doing a lot of the same things. However, we control all of that orchestration on the back end in a way that Snowflake Intelligence does not expose the level of customization to the user today. So this prompt got the agent to use Cortex Search so we can see the information that it returned. And as does Snowflake Intelligence, it cites its sources where you can go into them. And we're using TrueLens for model evaluation where you can submit feedback and then see that within your Snowsight console, the level of feedback that users are giving. So that gives us full end-to-end observability that the data team can then go in. And the same way that we provide BI to product teams and other teams throughout the organization to monitor production tools, we can now build that level of intelligence on top of our internal data platform. So the goal here is to completely abstract everything away from the user, single pane of interface, chat, and we can continue to develop tools. Now, how do we take this further? It's just developing tools, and tools are as simple as writing Python code that a lot of data engineers and analysts are already familiar with, plugging that into our graph, which is the agent orchestration, and it's then accessible to our agents to call on. So that can be things like MCP or custom Python, and we can start to interact with other business applications. So if my finance team wants to come in and say, like, hey, what would happen if we increased pricing or something, it can post that to our FP&A planning tool, run scenarios, and get results back. We just need the APIs accessible. So it's really going to open a lot of doors. And I know, Jeff, you've shared a lot of similar aspirations for what you're looking to build within Snowflake Intelligence as well. But this is where we are currently and what we're looking to continue developing on.
Now we know InfoStructs is an excellent Snowflake partner. We've got some folks in the room. I'd highly suggest checking them out. Did some excellent work for Whoop here. I'll give Matt a second here to just talk about them and the project. But before we jump into that, just curious, like, what were some of the main challenges you faced initially trying to roll out that type of workflow, and how'd you go about solving them?
Yeah, I think the main challenge that we faced early and often was the aspirational nature of what we were looking to accomplish. I think a lot of people shied away from this type of work saying, like, there's no product for dynamic semantic model generation. How can we do that? And there's no product to have like multiple agents in the loop. And InfoStructs kind of took that challenge, and Pierre, he loves agents himself and was able to like work with me to push the envelope. And like, huge kudos to the whole Whoop team as well. A lot of you are here. I think just people taking a bet and taking a risk on something that didn't really exist and was more working on the fly is where we saw a lot of success. So it's truly like great partnership and just taking a bet on some of the things we'd be able to do to get this off the ground and into production.
Awesome. Any other notes from the project itself? Things you were surprised about?
I think the surprise was that it came together fast once we had the framework in place.
Yeah.
Like, I think everyone's familiar with ChatGPT at this point and understands the power of it. And once you have these APIs or these tools in place, it's essentially as good as ChatGPT because within Snowflake's secure perimeter, you're still accessing the same models.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it was kind of the aha moment when it started to click was once we built the tools, the rest just came together and started working. So a lot of the work that InfoStruct's put in and that the teams partnered with on our data platform side was creating an application that's secure and also accessible to the organization.
Yeah, and I think it leads to a great point Jeff made earlier about the components of Snowflake Intelligence are composable, right? So, keep that in mind. I guess as Cortex Analyst APIs have been out for a while, Cortex Search, Cortex Complete. Originally, these were more pocketed solutions, and now we're finding a way to really, culminate and bring them all together to be utilized, as a fully managed product or platform. But that's not going to be the reality for everyone, and I think we understand that, right, Jeff? So it's more of a way in which you can then say, I have these awesome solutions for text to SQL for structured data, unstructured data with Cortex Search, et cetera. Where can I find how they best fit to serve value from an analytics perspective in my organization? So as we get into just, path to just general adoption, this is just a standard Snowflake platform architecture slide, but I know for a fact Whoop would not have been successful in their specific journey here if they didn't already have a good foundation with Snowflake, right? So, we see unstructured, semi-structured, and structured data. Whoop's utilizing all of those. Iceberg tables is a significant part of Whoop's use case and Whoop's data footprint with Snowflake. That is something that is utilized with native Snowflake tables as well. Again, though, it can be your own architectural pattern, whether you want to go with the data mesh route, a traditional data lakehouse, or a traditional data warehouse or a data lakehouse. Being able to utilize different compute query languages such as SQL, Java, Python, et cetera. And then different workloads, right? Data engineering, analytics, AI, and applications and collaboration are not a product, right? They're not their own four things. They're just ways in which we see folks utilizing Snowflake. But when you do purchase Snowflake, for those that might be prospects in the room, you are just buying, Snowflake to be able to use throughout your organization. You're not buying an individual SKU or anything to that extent. So I think that that's just something to keep in mind. And it's something that we talk about too. The folks that are trying to utilize AI with Snowflake, the same reason you bought Snowflake 5 years ago is the same reason you buy Snowflake now. You're getting a fully managed product and platform that's fully secure and governed with RBAC, et cetera, to be able to, get data out to your business users to drive analytical value.
Yeah, that's well said.
This is just a double tap on Jeff's earlier, notes about the Cortex slide, but specifically, we're continuing to, from the bottom up, have data connectors with OpenFlow. I know we had a big announcement on OpenFlow this week. There's a couple different deployment options there that I would suggest following up with your account teams on, but you can bring in unstructured data natively through OpenFlow. You have data that's AI ready and available to use from an app perspective, as well as just a structured data perspective from the marketplace, and then being able to use multimodal data as well. When we get to that processing and retrieval layer, I'll do my best to say this as well as Jeff, but basically, it's just a way in which you have a good unstructured data retrieval process with Cortex Search, a structured data retrieval, more text to SQL-like process with Cortex Analyst, and then being able to parse documents with things like Document AI and some embedding and parsing functions as well. And then bringing that, to full fruition at the very end with agent apps with Snowflake Intelligence, agent APIs to work with, routing and orchestration frameworks, and then obviously Cortex AI and SQL with on the center right of your side, or right-hand side of the screen, models of your choice from OpenAI, Anthropic, et cetera, being able to, utilize fine-tuning APIs for models that are available in Snowflake, and then again, all within a secure governed parameter with RBAC, guardrails, evaluations, et cetera. So taking the AI, do you have something? Any comments on that?
No,
okay.
Great job.
Okay, cool.
+1.
Yeah, +1. Okay,
keep it up.
Cool. From a Whoop Genie, we took the AI application framework and just tried to treat it as, what did Whoop do, right? So in the top left, utilizing Iceberg and native tables with OpenFlow from an unstructured data perspective, and then also moving into, again, we talked about building a dynamic semantic model generator with Snowpark and then utilizing Python in that respect. having the SQL engine still working traditionally from a data engineering perspective, and then obviously doing doc and image preprocessing with Cortex Search, and then bringing that to fruition with the retrieval engine. So that's more your traditional Cortex Analyst from a text to SQL perspective, Cortex Search from a unstructured retrieval perspective. Matt, I'd be curious if you talked a little bit about Cortex Search for semantic model selection. I think that's something that we're not seeing a ton of customers take advantage of, but could provide a ton of value.
Yeah, so for semantic model selection, there's really two routes that were evaluated here. There's the one which we took, which is fully end-to-end dynamically generating it. And then there's the second, which is probably slightly simpler to technically implement, but requires more upfront work by your data teams, which is building out all the possible semantic models and then allowing an embedding model like Cortex Search to go choose which one should be passed to the question. The reason that we decided to go the first route was because I don't want the data team to be just people that go from, hey, I'm a great data analyst, I'm technical, to somebody who just writes YAMLs all day based on business requests. I think these people are incredibly intelligent, talented, and should be working on like the hardest and most high value projects to the business. So wanting to abstract that to something that's just already part of our data workflows. We're already creating these YAML files that describe tables as part of our data governance strategy. So let's figure out a way to make this work for us. And we, again, developed this elegant solution. Now, the other solution would be just, hey, we are trying to come at this use case by use case. Maybe we create 3 or 4 semantic models and continue to grow over time. All you would then do is put those semantic models in a table, or you probably wouldn't want to put the whole YAML into a Snowflake table, but you'd want to summarize what's in this YAML file somehow, so a description, and you would embed that so that a user asks a question, and then you do Cortex Search limit 1, choose the most relevant YAML file, and then translate that name to go get the file from a stage or wherever you have it stored. If it's in a semantic view, you could pull it in there, and then pass that to Cortex Analyst.
Thanks, Matt. And then also about, you guys are utilizing Cortex Complete and calling out to, various LLMs to sort of do some prompt and question enrichment. Any comments there?
Yeah, I think the more information that you can give the AI, the better. It probably goes without saying, but something that we learned early on is that the context windows started to grow. When we first started testing some of these solutions, I'm pretty sure all of the models had an 8,000 token context window, which is really small in the grand scheme of things. Now it's essentially infinite, right? And it can handle all this complex information you're putting into it. So we enrich our prompts pretty deeply with information that can help the agent do the right thing. Now, there's a limit to that. You don't want to give it so much information that it becomes slow and it has to prune through all this information. So there's certainly a balance to that, and that was a good area that we were able to partner with InfoStrux, who has a lot more AI experience and could help us kind of think through some of these optimization parameters. But yeah, I think just enriching questions via unstructured data to make it tie more similarly to your business semantics. So something we would do is if a user says, like, how many customers do we have? And general AI isn't going to really know what customers are for you. Again, this kind of goes into the semantic models, but we would enrich that with a definition to just improve accuracy. So the more you're giving it, the better.
Great, thanks, Matt. And then again, moving along towards the right, obviously utilizing Cortex Agents or other agentic routing services that you can take advantage of. And then lastly, being able to serve that in an application up of your choice. So that could be Streamlit, Slack, Teams, in this case, Snowflake Intelligence, as well as a React application, and then just continuing to build off that. Again, I think with most things in Snowflake, we want to have a fully managed solution and a native offering, but we also understand that we want to meet you where you are from a data perspective. So that could be open source with Iceberg. That could be different UI frameworks that you're trying to utilize, different business users and personas, et cetera. So just an important thing to note. Like, this is not a one size, it's not just you can only use this and that's it. We can try to we want to be able to scale and be able to meet you where you are from a data perspective. So
yeah, I think that's the advice that I would just have for everyone is figure out what you're trying to solve first and not just how do I bring AI into my data, because that gives us the flexibility to engineer a solution that worked for Whoop. So what I'm talking about up here probably won't be the best solution for everybody, but depending on what you're trying to do, all the tools are in place. You can just build around that. And if you don't want to build, or you're on a smaller team that's less technical, there's a solution out of the box that you can make work. So that's what I think one of the biggest learnings for us was after we've been experimenting with these types of tools for close to 2 years now, is try to figure out what your end goal is and work backward from there to make sure you have the right pieces in place.
Sounds great.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll leave this up on the screen in case you want to sign up for a free month.